What's going on? Andres here. I'm over here in Brooklyn with my man Ryan.
How's it
Gonna
going?
gonna talk some business, some sales, how we scaled a pretty incredible offer together
From 300K to a million in 1 year.
in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, did some pretty cool stuff. So for you guys that maybe don't follow me, my name is Andres. I've been a remote sales pro for about 5 years. Over the last 2.5, 3 years, I've really wanted to get out of just closing by learning what other skills does it take to bring from the sales side to help offer owners kind of scale their business and make a bigger impact, and of course, make more money. And Ryan, if you want to just share a little bit about you.
Sure. Yeah. So I run a coaching program called the Artful Dollar. We do financial education, financial coaching. We also do some marketing coaching, primarily all for tattoo artists because that's my background. Um, I've been doing this total for like 3 years, but really things kicked off about 2 years ago, and it was shortly after that I got put in touch with Andres. And actually, the story about how we got connected is really cool. I'm a big believer in like synchronicity, but you also have to like put yourself in the position for synchronicity to like show up.
Mhm.
And so I had another entrepreneur, business owner friend tell me about Crosey's program,
Oh yeah,
Masters of Fate.
yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you should join it. It's all this good stuff and, helping overworked business owners not burn out." And that's where I was at. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I could use that." I ended up doing like almost none of that program at all. I went to like maybe 2 or 3 live things, but the networking
Mm,
was worth
mm,
every fucking penny. When you surround yourself with other business owners like that, like again, the synchronicities, you had no idea what you were going to get out of it. There was another sales rep in that group, and I was like, "Oh shit, I need a sales rep. Well, maybe I should talk to the community there." They put me in touch with Mason, or
right.
Mason saw my post.
Mm,
He's like, "Oh, I know someone right now. He just got off an offer. He's looking for something new
yeah.
to sink his teeth into." I was like, "Okay, cool." Anyway, like I said, I did nothing else with that whole program, but we met and we kicked it off, and like that paid for the whole thing. It was like a $10,000 program that I did nothing with, but meeting you 10x
Yeah.
multiple, my investment. So
Yeah.
100x my investment. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Which is
Yeah.
funny because I was interviewing around kind of, okay, where do I wanna like make my home for the next 2, 3 years? Like I don't really like offer hopping. I think it's kind of something that sales reps are forced to do. Um, and there was something about meeting you, like you were definitely a little bit more early
I
stage
was
and
green.
you're
I was
green.
green. Yeah.
Than any of the other offers I had interviewed, and I was like, "No, this thing has legs. This thing has potential." And then like some of the numbers you're already doing like really made me feel like, all right,
Yeah, we
let's
were probably already, I think I had done an $80,000 in revenue month
mhm,
at that time. I did like 30 and then 50 and then 80, but it was bumping up and down a bit.
yeah,
And, but it was brand new. And it's funny because now I'm like this is 2 years in. I remember thinking at the time, like, I know what I'm doing. I'm hot shit. And I look back and now I was like, I knew fucking
nothing, nothing.
nothing. So, and again, it was like really synchronistic that I met you because I know enough of the world of closers that like there's some crazy people out there.
Crazy people out there.
I've been on enough calls, where I've
Mm,
met closers and I'm like, I would never want this rep selling
represent your business,
to represent my
right?
business.
Right,
And I was like, oh, man, are tattooers gonna buy from like the people that I've met? Like, I'll
right,
buy from them. Like, I look past, I'm like, okay, what's the offer?
right, right,
But
right.
a lot of my audience they're very price sensitive. They're very trust, like they,
Hmm.
and so I met you and I was like, all right, we got to get rid of that chain and maybe the hat or something. There was something I was like,
And that,
throw on a
and that.
flannel. I was like, put a flannel shirt on, you'll be fine. Like that'll build trust or something like that. And so, but it ended up being so much more than a sales rep, and that's what
Yeah,
I needed. And I had no idea that I needed that because I
yeah,
didn't know what I needed.
yeah.
I thought I knew what I was doing.
That's what I want to talk about a little bit too, because I think there's either business owners in my network or salespeople in my network, and I think one of the things that excites me most is as a sales rep is when you can learn everything about the actual sales process, not just closing. That's how you can really help businesses grow and scale. And also, that's how, in my opinion, you make a home for yourself instead of having to constantly lead, hoping that that next offer is going to give you the runway to 20K months. So that you can actually build that for yourself when you have more skills outside of just closing. That's kind of like what we'll talk about today is how that's how I came on as a closer because you have to build that authority and that relationship by proving that you have the skill set to do the job.
I was constantly in fear that you were gonna leave our offer because like lead flow would be like crazy high and then nothing,
Yeah,
and then and like I was like, "Oh, Andres is gonna he's
I'm just
gonna
gonna
leave
bounce.
us." But no, you would come and you'd be like, "All right, let's solve this
Yeah,
problem." And then you and I really built,
yep,
and that's why we wanted to talk. Was like it was more of a partnership
definitely.
than just like someone taking sales calls.
Mhm,
And I am so grateful for that, dude. I
yeah,
would not be where I am
mhm,
today if it wasn't for you.
from
From
the
the
heart.
heart, I'm not making that up. Like seriously,
Mhm,
we wouldn't be here. We
mm,
wouldn't be doing. We're on track for do another $1 million year this year, and we parted ways because we were running into we had to pivot our business and stuff like that. So I started taking sales calls, and but you've been a consultant and an
mhm,
ongoing support. Even though you're not taking sales calls for us, and there have been so many calls where like that one thing that one bit of advice like made a world of difference.
yeah,
And so I'm excited to share, some of what that was and just like the process of
yeah,
working together. Yeah.
yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate that, man. So we, it's kinda we were joking about this, the online space, you get so you spend so much time with the people you work with, and it's you rare that you meet in person. We've been able to hang out a few times. Ryan came to
Yep.
San Diego, actually, we'll talk about
Yeah.
the webinar that we put together
That
while in San
was
Diego,
that
which
was
was
tight.
killer. But just to give a little, like, trajectory of how we were working together, I came on part-time call volume, learning the offer. Um, about a month in, I was selling for another offer as well. I think that's a normal thing when you're a salesperson. You kind of juggle two until one really proves that you're going to make the OTs that you want. And so left the other thing I was doing, double down on this. That was, I think, going into December.
Yeah.
And then I realized, and this is one of the things that, like, as a salesperson, like when you're working on other offers, I think it's really important your first year, double down, get really good at closing, learn how to objection handle, learn how to do a discovery, like learn how to consistently close because like you'll never struggle for money. Then look at what other offers are doing really, really well. So you can learn how to do that for yourself. Even if you're not a full expert, right? You can just understand the process. And so at my previous offer, we were really good at doing live events and webinars. And there's something about that. I was like, I want to learn how to do this. Like, I want to learn how to do it and do it well. And I was emceeing, I was a part of the events, I was self facilitating, I was closing at the events, and we also were doing remotely. We did them very well, and that's when I had that idea. I was like, okay, how do we solve our lead flow issue?
Right.
Right, like we
We
have
had never done a live event
never had
before.
done no live, but we
Yeah.
had a setter, and we'll talk about the setter skills
Right.
in a sec because that's a funny journey. So
Yeah.
we love you, man, and you know who you are. Um, and so we decided to do a webinar together, and we did that for in January.
Yeah.
First webinar, which I think we had like what 95 people, maybe like 120
Something like that. We
people.
booked like 30
We
calls,
booked
I feel, in
31
an
sales calls,
hour. Yeah.
31 sales calls,
Yeah.
which I closed like 21 or like 24 of
Yeah,
them
a high
that month
percentage. Yeah.
because it was a six-figure month that
Yeah.
first month.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
January was like our first six-figure month ever.
first figure
Yeah.
room month, and that was before we had raised our price point. We had
Yeah.
raised it from 3,500 to 45.
Right,
Well,
right, right.
I ended up raising it again, but we didn't do it then yet.
Right. It was like almost a year later that we raised it
Yeah.
again, I think. Yeah.
And so that became like a staple of like a lead gen process
Right.
for us.
It was like lead magnet webinar. Like
Yeah.
lead magnets got people to get the conversation going, and then we invite them to a webinar
Yeah.
after we've built that
Yeah.
rapport, that trust.
And so one of the things we did really well together is that we created the webinar together. Ryan's a very obviously creative person, and so you crushed it with the structure we did together.
We had a couple different iterations.
Yeah, we did.
But the very first one was very much you helped guide me on like, okay, what is the narrative? Oh, you know what the first one was? It was
The two
the
avatars.
2 avatars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Everlast and Mr.
Mr.
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe.
Yeah. So we were vilifying like, the person that relies on GoFundMe for emergencies.
Right, and how to build your, a Me account instead of a
Yep.
GoFundMe account, like, how do you save for the future? Because, but that was one cool
That was a good
kind of
one.
way we did it, and it worked
We
well.
did it 3 times
Yeah,
fair March, and
because
we
the
crushed it.
audience can identify, they're like, "Oh, I don't wanna be Mr. GoFundMe, I wanna be
Yeah.
Mr. Everlast
Yep.
who can withstand anything,"
Mhm.
so that was a very cool format, and then we had the standard kind of 3 biggest mistakes and
Mhm. Mhm.
3 things you need to do.
Yeah.
That's a pretty standard one, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
And we qualified pretty well because on those 3 months, I was closing a crazy high amount. Well,
yeah,
obviously, their webinar and much more warmed up.
yeah,
But I think that really showed. I think the biggest thing was as a like, that's what set us up to really take this on more as, like, a partnership
yeah.
instead of just like, "Oh, let me book your
Oh, I
calendar."
relied on you, dude. I
Yeah.
was constantly like, "What would Andres think about this?" And I, like, always wanted to call you and talk to you
Yeah, yeah.
about, like, what I just needed to bounce these ideas off of, and, like, everyone on the team was great, but no one on the team understood lead generation
Mhm,
like you did.
mhm.
And so you were a sales rep, but I constantly, and we would bounce these ideas off each other, and
Yeah.
it was fun. It was
Yeah,
really, really
it was
fun.
and that's what I think I liked so much about us working together was it just challenged me creatively outside of just, "Okay, how do I objection cycle for 8 hours a day?" I think as a sales rep, once you've been in the game for 3, 2, 3, 4 years, like, you're starting to look at, "Okay, how else do I wanna grow my career? What else do I wanna be a part of?" And learning how to drive leads, have the right copy, the right marketing, like that whole process that ends up leading to the one call close. Like there's a whole formulaic
Oh my
system that
god,
goes
we
to it.
didn't have triage videos.
Yep.
You told us to do that. And also, I will say, like, we came up with very creative comp structures
Yep.
because you brought so much more value than just percentage of sales.
Yeah.
And we needed to do that, and it was worth every penny because we were investing in you, learning from you, and building this. It couldn't have been done any other way, and it was really cool to say, like, all right, well, normally,
Mhm.
traditionally, it's 10%, but, like, let's do a higher percent, let's do a higher base,
Mhm.
because you are bringing so much value to the team that I don't
Yeah.
even know I could have learned any other way,
Mhm.
other than being in
Just
the
be in it.
in the trenches with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
batting ideas back and forth. Yeah.
Which one of the things I think for sales professionals are you realize that you are the market research of the owner. You're talking to the
Yeah.
people that we wanna help every day. You're understanding their language, you're understanding their pain
So they're
points.
saying this a lot. Let's
Mhm.
do that in the next webinar. Let's make
Exactly.
content. Let's make a lead magnet that solves this, because I keep hearing people say
Exactly.
XYZ.
Yeah.
And so I was getting that feedback from you,
Mhm.
and then I could then turn that into the marketing, which then generated more leads. And it was this
Exactly.
feedback loop. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's 2 kinda angles here that I like to talk about, like, as an, like, owner operator, when you can find that unicorn closer, someone that's willing to do all these other things, like, how do you compensate them in a way that's gonna incentivize them to, like, keep helping you really scale the business? And then from, like, the sales professional lens is, there's this like really it's like the trend now of like, rev share and like high the only way you're going to get higher commission or more favorable commission or even a base salary is when you're proving that you're an invaluable asset to that business by doing more than just closing, right? By like having a hand in everything and actually seeing the results happen, then the relationship becomes like, oh, how do I make sure that you stay with me? And that's how you create a long-term relationship and in turn, like a long-term home as a salesperson where you don't have to like keep cycling offers because, oh, lead flow went down. Like, let me look for another job. Instead, it's like, okay, it's a little bit of a slow month. What are we seeing? Can we do together? Right. And you're taking full ownership, not only for your own income, but also for like where the business is going.
Do you want to tell the story about me going to San Diego?
Yeah, so we before we do that,
Yeah.
we did the webinars and that was a huge lead gen. I think I want to talk about the setting process,
Yeah.
because that's really important. I think it's very overlooked. And then we'll talk about the San Diego game.
Sure.
And so at the time when I came on, like Ryan was booking organically calls. He had essentially a glorified VA, very hardworking kid, but he really struggled with English, and so we didn't really have any scripts. So I helped write out some scripts. But he was just like with your audience. We needed someone that could really be like dynamic.
Right. It worked to get the cream off the top.
Yeah.
People that were just so hungry, they were
Yeah.
ready to book calls and they didn't need a lot of creativity in the setting process. But then everyone that was a little bit more skeptical than that top 10%,
Right.
he couldn't really go off script, and those nuanced parts of the
Yeah.
conversation are really important.
Yeah. And I think that so the setting I talk a lot about this in my content. Is like the setting process is one of the most underdeveloped skills in the remote closing space, right?
Mhm.
Because people want to set and then they just want to get into closing, or the business owners think that if you just have a good enough closer, like that's going to, like, you're just going to muscle your way to a 30-40% close rate, which is like can be true. But like, think about it, like as a salesperson, right? When you get a lead that gets on the phone and is like, what's this about? Or what was the influencer? He told me to go on a call versus a high intent buyer that comes on and says, "Yeah, I've been following Ryan. We had a great chat. I'm interested to learn to see if he can help me." It's a whole different conversation. And like, if you had 6 calls of this type of avatar a day versus this avatar, right? You're not going to like burn out at the end of the day or feel fried.
I mean, to be honest, like, I'm not even half the closer you are. Like, objection handling is not my thing. I've been booking like 15 calls a week for myself recently,
Yeah.
and they're so handled on the front end. I
Yeah.
don't need to be a good
You don't
closer.
even, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just like tapping them in. And so much of the sales process, this is one of probably the most important thing I learned from you is it's all handled on the front end so that you don't have to handle it. Like, one simple thing that anyone can do is, like, when you told me to, like, tell them, "Hey, by the way, I'm gonna challenge you.
Yeah.
Are you cool with that?" Like, I say to people, like, "We become the best version of ourselves when we are
Yeah.
challenged, but are you here for that?"
Yeah.
They're always like, "Oh, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
want." Then, when it comes to the end, when they're like, "Oh, yeah, I don't know, it's expensive," it's like, "Well, what are you here to do?" Like, are you gonna keep on
Yeah.
paying the price of inaction?
Yeah.
Or are you gonna pay the
Right.
price up front and then never have to worry about this ever again?
Yeah.
It's so much easier when you
Way easier.
handle it up front. But even before they get on the
Even before
call,
the call.
the
Yeah.
setting process, the resources, the whole
Yeah,
thing.
and that's something that as an owner operator, like be very aware of having that in place before you bring on a salesperson. Because what's going to happen is if you don't have that dialed, a salesperson is going to come on, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to leave, and the worst thing is, I don't think you experience this, but like recruiting salespeople, like spending the time and then training them and ramping them, like it's just you're just
I mean,
making.
we've been through setters. We've
Yeah,
been through a couple different setters, and like that is a stressful process. So I can't
yeah.
even imagine.
Yeah.
With closers, and we're looking to hire a sales rep again pretty soon. So we're on the front end getting all our SOPs
Yep.
down, packed, our process every step of the way, so that by the time we get someone on, they're so prepared for success.
Yeah, they're set up. Yep.
And it's a lot of work now. I didn't realize that at all.
So for like the owners, right, the founders that follow me, like for you guys, is how can you start thinking about these things, especially if you're selling for yourself, kind of like what you are, so you can just show up and like close at like 70%. I mean, you are the
I'm closing over 70% right now.
yeah,
It's nuts.
yeah,
People get on the call in the form that they fill out for the call. They're like, "I'm ready."
yeah,
Like, for ready for what? Like, ready to
yeah.
buy. Like, they're just like, they're hungry.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
this is a mix of like Ryan's like really good at his content, but then how do you generate the right leads, right? How do you getting the right people to start the right conversations? And one of the things I always talk about is the setting process. Like those first couple questions that you or your DM setter is doing is so important to actually funnel the call into the right way. And then booking like the right framed conversation. Like booking that if you want to close one call closes consistently, like people need to be prepared and framed for that, right?
That's the other thing, actually. Like, I started meeting with my setter 3 times a week,
Yeah,
which I wasn't doing
so
before.
important.
And I was always left wondering, like, well, how come we're not booking calls, or what is this? And it's like, okay, let's increase the frequency. And because, again, I learned a lot of setting from you and
Yeah,
having to do it myself, um, she tells me what she's seeing. I can give her feedback. We can adjust scripts as needed,
Yeah.
because we have that quick feedback loop. I'm not waiting to the end of the week to be like, well, how come we didn't book any
Right,
calls? It's
right,
like,
not reaction.
but if
Yeah,
I didn't have that skill set as the founder, I wouldn't be able to give her the feedback as
exactly.
the setter.
Yeah.
And we again, we work as a close knit team.
Yeah, that's so important, and then that with the right resources or material or, like, we call it a triage video, something that's really preparing someone.
Yeah.
They get on the call, we're doing a little bit of a custom strategy for Ryan right now, but they get on the call, much higher buying intent, and then your skills in closing, like, as the influencer, they don't need to be as good as, like, for, let's say, someone for me who isn't in the content, but so long as you know how to, like, challenge them and can handle a think about it, like, you're
Yeah.
gonna close at, like, a high level, and that's on the setting process, and so that's why the setting process is so important, and then finding the right person who you can mentor, who's also skilled, and who is open to communication and feedback. I think that was so important up front, and then you can pour more volume in terms of leads into the funnel
Right.
because you know, like, the ball isn't gonna be dropped. And
Right.
that's why for us, we actually ended up hiring, we replaced that initial setter with someone who was very, very well trained,
Yeah.
and he crushed it, and then he eventually ended up leaving, and we brought on, Selene now,
Excellent. Yeah.
who's doing really well.
She's phenomenal. And honestly, like, I don't know if this is necessarily for every offer, but what's working well on our offer is like Selena is not only being compensated for commission on sales, but we're taking a long-term nurture of our audience. And so again, to have that communication skill to like she's taking care of people. And so we give her a slightly higher base. But it's that way she's not only incentivized to just push people to calls, because that's not always what's needed in
Mhm.
that moment. Sometimes they just need another resource or they need someone to be like, I totally get it. Like, that sucks what you're dealing with. I'm sorry to hear that. Here's something. And so she's really keeping people warm. And so we have this pot of like bubbling hot
Mhm.
leads
Yeah,
to constantly
yeah,
pull from.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's I think that kinda explains why that process is so one, it's so important, and two, it's just underdeveloped. I think it's so easy for salespeople, like, "Oh, I just wanna
Right. You're
get
just
on
like,
closing
get them on a
you know,
call. Just
calls."
get them on a call. And it's like, well, if they think they're there for a couple tips and tricks, that's not,
Yeah,
you don't want that person on the call. There's no
yeah,
point in booking that call.
yeah, like, take your time priming them up, having the right process, and that way you're gonna just consistently close at a high level, and you're gonna mitigate, like, the energy drain, especially when you're taking 6 calls a day, 8 calls a day, right? When you're consistently closing, you don't feel it, but if you're taking 6, 8 calls and, like, you don't close and you just start questioning yourself, you
Oh, it's
start getting
brutal.
feeling fried, and
Yeah.
that's how I think why a lot of salespeople struggle with consistency and also hitting their income goals at a consistent level, right? If
Yeah.
you wanna be banking over 20K a month in commission, you need to have a vehicle that's gonna allow you to do that, right? And that
Yeah.
goes into what we just talked about. Um, I think another thing that we ended up then doing is we co-created an offer, the what we called the Artful Marketer,
Right.
and that was because, 1, we were going through a kind of a slump in sales.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, and this is like so like this is like the perspective like I really try and share with salespeople. I knew it wasn't a closing issue. I knew it wasn't a sales issue. I was like, I'm talking to prospects that we can't help with our offer.
Right. The problem that they need solved is not a money saving problem. It's a money
A money
making
making
problem.
problem.
And
Yeah.
our offer wasn't designed to do
Wasn't
that.
the
Yeah.
yeah. So we sat down after like 2 slow months and we're like, okay, how do we
It was rough.
how do we
I
get
was
this
like, I don't know if we're gonna pull through this. And you're like, you're gonna go back to tattooing? I was like, no, I'm gonna come up with something.
I
And
remember that call. Yeah.
not that I love tattooing, it's just I now at a point in my career where I love helping tattooers more. I'm more passionate about it. I was like, I'm not going back to doing something that I'm less passionate about. And man, we pulled some shit out of our ass, and it was incredible.
Yeah, we you sent me that video, I remember. It was like, if you're in this situation, you gotta sell your way out of it,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that.
there's some guy, he was like, I got $100,000 in payroll at the end of the month. I fucking sold my way out of it. And I was like, this is what we're
This
gonna
is what we're
fucking
gonna do.
do.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, we were gonna launch a tiny offer to help the lower like ticket sales. We're like, no, no, no. Let's actually make that like a bigger offer. And then let's do a webinar. and we're going to push that. And then I happened to be on a podcast that month that was in San
In San
Diego.
Diego, yeah.
And so I was already flying out there. I was like, all right, let's design this webinar. But instead of pushing them to book a call, let's actually make an offer and
let's
sell
pitch
to
them
them
from the webinar,
on
one to
the
many,
webinar, which
one to many.
I had never done before.
Yeah.
I don't think you have one-to-many sales experience. You have sales experience.
In person, I've done events, but not
Okay.
not sold from virtual webinars. No.
So this was like, all right, we haven't really done this before. And we're like, okay, we designed the webinar. I typed out the framework on the airplane to San Diego.
Yeah.
We
spent that like whole weekend at my
spent
crib.
the whole weekend
Just jamming
going
on
over.
this
It
thing.
was like Mr. Miyagi shit. It was like, okay, I would do the whole pitch. And he's like, okay, I want you to do it again, slow it down, bring your tone here, and then that part, skip it, and then do it this way.
Yep.
Okay, again. Okay, do it again.
Yes.
Wax on, wax
Yes.
on, wax on, wax on. Like by the end of the day, I was like exhausted. I was like, all right, you're coming back here tomorrow, 8 a.m. We're
Yep.
gonna do this shit again.
Yes.
That training, that repetition, and just tweaking and dialing in the process. When I did lead that seminar, it was so dialed in. It was perfect. And we sold $30,000 in an hour.
And then that month, I think we did like 80.
And that month we did we did another $50,000
with the triple.
of people that came that didn't buy on the call but bought later. And we were like, we got something that has legs. We've pivoted, and now that offer we've quadrupled the price of that offer in the past year. And we don't sell it one-to-many anymore. I sell it on sales calls. That's become our main offer. Our other offers now become our upsell offer. And so, but we would have never learned those lessons if we had not gone through that painful experience, that difficult time. And so,
well, just to talk to like the behind the scenes there is like a lot of early stage coaching businesses fall in the trap of like, you have like 6 months of good months. And so your overhead increases, right? You start bringing on a team, you start taking on more expenses, and then whatever was working then stops working, right? Your leads, maybe ads change, whatever it is. And now you have a few slow months, like red months, because your overhead's high. So you need to pivot. And that's when I think it was that meeting where I was like, look, man, I'm talking to people like I can't sell. Can we come up with something different? And I think we had urgency to make it happen.
Right.
But then we started, I started selling it. Before we had the product, before we had
you're like, so yeah, seems like you need help, like actually marketing, like generating tattoo clients. We're launching something. And you were like, that doesn't exist. And I didn't even tell the guy.
I didn't even tell Ryan yet.
He just started selling.
Remember,
like, okay, Ryan, you need
I was like, Ryan, I made 7 sales. And
you took deposits or something, right? They were like $500 deposits on something. And I was like, all right, I guess we're doing this.
Yes, we're doing it. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that, so I
knew you wouldn't do that if you weren't 100% sure that I could create that. We had already tested it out. But it wasn't its own separate offer. But again, we just had this partnership.
We had partnership relationship.
We had this synergy. And if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have done that. And then it was,
I think that was so key. Because then when we did the webinar, I mean, we crushed it on the webinar.
Yeah.
And I mean, that month became, I think it was one of our biggest months, right?
That month was one of our biggest months. I think the next month, it was that month and the next month. We did 130,000, and then I think we did 150,000 the following month.
Yeah. 150, I think it was cash.
Because we took the recording of the webinar.
Yeah. And we were driving leads too.
And we were just driving leads to the recording of the webinar. So
this consistent.
People were just buying off that.
They're buying off that, like no sales calls.
And then of course, at the end of the day, like your fulfillment has to be on point. So all these people are going into this program, and then they were like 3xing their investment in the first 2 months.
Yeah.
So they were paying, $1,200 and they were making another $3,000 to $5,000 right away. And, then they're telling their people, and then there was immediately this buzz. That thing that Ryan's doing. Oh, people are actually making money on it. People were talking about it.
Yeah. At conventions.
Yep.
And then we were upselling people into the
higher ticket.
Yeah. And then we also co-created a renewal after that.
Yeah.
the inner circle.
Yeah.
And so what went from when we first started working together, it was a $3,500 program. Now we had a stepping stone that they were working 1,200 bucks. We would later raise it to 18,
Right.
and then
And now it's
55.
45.
It's 45 now?
We're raising it again this
Nice.
month. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people are killing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then now you have a $4,500 offer, then a 5,500.
Upsell. And then we're changing our kind of renewal process. But yeah, now we have like a subscription thing. So we're
Subscription on the back end.
generating MRR.
Yeah.
We're also really, you know what we're doing actually? I don't even know if I told you this. We're taking the same process with the triage video.
Yeah.
We're making a referral video.
Nice.
Did I mention that?
I think you did.
I think I
Yeah.
mentioned it. And so we're now giving our clients something that they can easily share with other people that gets them interested.
Mm,
You know, because referrals are such a hard thing to like
yeah.
get people to do it. And so you have to make it as easy as possible
yeah.
for them to share the information that you want them to share. And so
Mhm.
rather than, oh, put me on a 3-way text,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
It's like we're making a video that they can then send to their friends and say, hey, just check this out. It's a 15-minute, you know,
I love that.
video full of information and testimonials. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. The referral game is so important.
Yeah. That's our main focus right now is subscriptions and referrals. Like me and our COO, Thamar, were listening to Hermosi talk about like, what's the number, if you could change one thing in your business right now, and that would make the biggest impact, what would that be? And now where we're at, because first you're just trying to fucking get as many leads sold
Yeah.
as you can, but now we're at the place where like the real big game changer is that referral and renewal process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just to like kind of, I guess, talk about our journey, right? We
Yeah.
came on, we did the webinars, I was closing, then I brought on our setter, I was training him. And through that like J curve of growth, that's where we negotiated like a base plus like a creative like commission structure, which is really, really like motivating for me. And like you'll be on offers sometimes where they do promise like these crazy commission bonuses, but no one hits them. Right. So
Right.
working with you, like we had the proof that it was possible.
Yeah.
And even when we were hitting bigger and bigger months, like there was, we were setting the records for ourselves,
Yeah.
but every month just built on the previous one. Then I think after the webinars, we was really dialing the setting process. Then we co-created the newer offer. We launched that. And after about a few months after that, when we kind of decided to part ways, it wasn't because like things didn't work out. It just made sense for you to kind of refine a few things
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
take sales calls yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ryan's been doing that. And so that way you kind of molded it into a way that you went back to like a leaner business.
We leaned down, and that's what we said. This past year has been like the pruning, like the
Yeah.
tree grew real big and bushy.
Yep.
And then this past year has been pruning down and really noting. So we used to have a VA, like a full-time assistant, and then we took and delegated things from that onto other team members.
Yeah.
We stopped taking as many sales calls. You know, we started charging for sales calls. So now
tell people the sauce.
that's we get higher quality sales. So now I'm taking calls with people that are a higher quality. And if I didn't know how to sell, I'd be so fucked every single day that I'm taking 5, 6, 7 sales calls in a day. I'm so glad I have this skill.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the head, whatever, the CEO or whatever, the influencer you want to call it, you have to, if you got to shovel shit, you got to shovel shit. If you got to get in the trenches, like I will close, I will do whatever it takes to keep my company going in the direction. You need to wear all those hats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even when we did part ways, Ryan and I continued in like more of like a coaching consulting relationship.
Yeah.
Their
we
relationship
still
was,
do.
yeah,
I mean, we still,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like having that relation where we can have like those difficult conversations in a way. I was like, hey, business
Yeah.
this direction. I'm gonna go this direction, but also I'll support you as you do that.
Oh
And
yeah. And I've just
Right.
been sending you so many people because I'm like,
it's been awesome.
I know I can send literally anyone your way and they're in the best hands possible. So I don't have to worry about someone being like, Ryan, you fucking recommended, some fool. No, it's I've seen it changing the lives of every single person I've sent your way. So
Mhm.
thank
Yeah, I
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure
Yeah,
to
dude.
support all. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I think the biggest takeaway for I kind of speak it to two types of, I guess, avatars. You're an avatar. Um, if you're an owner operator, like looking at like really being familiar with your sales process. And if you're not, hire me and I'll do it for you, right? Or if you're a salesperson, right? Like some of the best opportunities are these greener offers. But if you only know how to close, if that's all you want to do, then it's not going to work for you. Just find a bigger company and that's fine. But if you are entrepreneurial and you do get excited by building something, I think there's so much opportunity. It's also you need to have the skill of like how to find the gems. Like not every like offer out there that's green will have potential, and you need to cultivate that skill set. But as you keep learning how to get good at lead generation, at setting, at recruiting, at training, of course, at closing. But then using all those skills is what's going to help you create stability in your career, but also make more money because you're helping business owners grow, and that's where you can negotiate all like the aggressive commission, and and your owner's like stoked to pay you that because you're both making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anything else?
I think that's it.
That's
Thanks for
it.
coming on, man.
Yeah. If anyone has questions for me, feel free to reach out. Hit me up on Instagram, Ryan Roy, ROI tattoo, Ryan Roy tattoo. If you want to ask me a question, hit Andres up.
Or
Where do they hit you up?
yeah, Facebook for the salespeople, Instagram for anyone else following me there. Facebook is Andres Mego, obviously, and Instagram, don't think I've changed it recently, is Andres _remote life.
Cool. Good shit.
All right. Later.